It's a kind of bait and switch plan. They bait people to come in with the promise of providing more, but in fact, many of the beneficiaries receive less. Correct?
Well, I certainly wouldn't put it that way. If a senior has original or traditional Medicare, they can expect to receive up to 100 days of coverage for their stay with no hassle. If a senior has a Medicare Advantage plan, however, they can expect to receive a denial well before their doctors even say they're ready to go home. Now, these are not uninsured individuals. These are individuals who have chosen and paid for a Medicare product that was heavily marketed and aggressively sold to them. They're not getting the coverage that they paid for, and they're met with hurdles at every turn.
In a world where Chris has been accused of being the lone voice in the insurance industry, of sounding an alarm about Medicare Advantage plans and advocating for seniors to be more educated on their options, I, Don LaFontaine, will speak instead of Chris this time. This way, he is not accused of spreading disinformation or grandstanding on negative news about Medicare Advantage. In 2023, the United States Senate held hearings on the routine denial of care from Medicare Advantage plans. In the next few clips, you will hear startling information that has not been made public beyond C-SPAN. In an attempt to offer his clients a balanced view of the two Medicare choices available to seniors, Chris and the team at Senior Savings Network wants you to know not only the good, but the bad and the ugly. Please pay very close attention to the words used here.
Ms. Huberty.
My name is Christine Huberty, and I've served as an attorney at the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources since 2015. As an advocate for senior residents of Wisconsin, part of my job is to provide legal assistance to residents experiencing Medicare coverage denials. I'm here today to share my experiences with Medicare Advantage plans routinely denying coverage of skilled nursing facility stays, which endangers the health and safety of beneficiaries, causes unnecessary stress and financial hardship, and many times shifts expenses to the state's Medicaid program. Skilled nursing facilities are intended to be a temporary rehabilitation or nursing care facility after a hospital stay. For example, if a person breaks a hip, needs surgery, their doctor generally recommends several weeks in a skilled nursing facility until they're ready to safely go home. If a senior has original or traditional Medicare, they can expect to receive up to 100 days of coverage for their stay with no hassle. If a senior has a Medicare Advantage plan, however, they can expect to receive a denial well before their doctors even say they're ready to go home. This is despite the requirement that's been discussed that Advantage plans must offer the same benefits and apply the same coverage criteria as original Medicare. When a patient first receives a denial, they're thrown into a maze of red tape that is dizzying even to our experienced legal team. The initial denial is made not by the Advantage plan, but a third-party contractor using an algorithm. A computer determines what a patient's predicted length of stay should be based on millions of past beneficiary data points, not the patient's plan of care or the advice of their doctors. Then, at each additional level of appeal, if the patient actually chooses to fight it, the denials are upheld by quality improvement organizations with little to no explanation. If a patient is successful with an appeal while still in the facility, they can expect a new round of denials to start in a matter of days. Patients caught in this maze are forced to make a devastating decision: stay in the rehab facility and pay thousands of dollars out of pocket, or go home against medical advice. In Wisconsin, we have a unique legal services program with attorneys able to take these cases at no cost. When we represent clients at federal hearings, more often than not, the denials are overturned. But this is after months of document gathering, preparation of summary briefs, rounding up witnesses, and a telephone hearing against a team of representatives brought by the Advantage plans if they show up at all. Even if a patient is successful at hearing, it can still take well over a year to get reimbursed. This issue has even hit me personally. This past holiday season, a family member called me and explained that his 89-year-old mother had fallen while and was hospitalized and entered a skilled nursing facility for rehab. They'd received a denial after just a week, and they didn't know what to do because her doctor said she still wasn't ready to go home. My first question was, does she have an Advantage plan? When the answer was yes, my heart sank because I knew immediately what this family was going to be up against. After a total of 3 falls, 2 hospital stays, and repeated denials, she ultimately went home against medical advice and decided that the appeals process was too stressful to pursue. Fortunately, this family had enough money to pay for the denied charges and lived close enough to help locate safe housing options and home care. But what does this situation look like for an individual with no family or friends or legal representation? In Wisconsin, the average cost of just 1 day in a skilled nursing facility is over $300. The individuals who can't afford to stay will likely be advised to spend down their assets, forcing poverty to qualify for the state's Medicaid program. Now, these are not uninsured individuals. These are individuals who have chosen and paid for a Medicare product that was heavily marketed and aggressively sold to them. They're not getting the coverage that they paid for, and they're met with hurdles at every turn. Nor are these patients abusing the system. No one truly wants to be in a skilled nursing facility. Patients are actively trying to get home. In the case examples that I've provided your investigative team, you'll note that in nearly all situations, the patients returned home on the timeline prescribed by their doctors, and sometimes even earlier, not the unrealistic and at times unconscionable timeline forced upon them by their Medicare Advantage plan. Our most valuable citizens are up against an impossible system, and I want to thank you for your time to investigate these practices.
Ms. Huberty.
When this first came up, I went to Medicare website and looked at what I might expect for my husband. And I saw the figure of 100 days. So I think you can imagine how surprised I was when I was told after a considerably smaller number of days he was going to be discharged. For me, the problem becomes an issue of trust.
Even 100 days is a limit. What would happen after the 100 days? You get discharged to a long-term care facility where there's no hope for rehab? I mean, what's the next step then?
These ladies can all correct me if I'm wrong, but what I read was after 100 days, we would have had the option of leaving him there, and there would have been a copay that came into place.
Okay. Well,
so I would have had the option of saying, yes, I can cover this percentage of this fee, and he can stay there.
So, Ms. Huber, do you want to take a crack at how you would define the problem we're dealing with here today?
I think the main issue is that the Advantage plans are deferring the decision-making to a lot of third parties, and none of those third parties are the doctors that are meeting with the patients or, they're treating therapists. They are rarely even looking at their medical records. Often it is that algorithm that starts the process, and there is very little oversight. They are rubber stamp denial as they go through the process.
So I think you're kind of making the point I was making earlier in terms of our entire healthcare financing system is we're deferring all these decisions to a third party. What are your overall solutions? I'll start with you, Ms. Bend. And by the way, I have all the sympathy in the world because we've had, my in-laws, my parents. My parents fortunately didn't have my mother pass within 24 hours, massive stroke, but it was my mother-in-law and father-in-law that just went through and hospitalization after hospitalization and getting booted out before they certainly felt they were ready to go home. And I mean, it's a horrible process. So you have my deepest sympathy. But what do you think?
I would like to see the people who are actually giving the care and know the patient not being overridden in their decisions by a third party that is perhaps using software to make their decisions. And anecdotally, I will tell you that when it was time to stop, my husband's primary care was very clear with him and us about that. He knew when it was time to stop treating and stop pursuing an elongation of something that was not going to change. I think they're trustworthy. I would go with them.
And again, the pushback would be there are going to be some people going to game the system. They might have some financial gain by having people there, but the cost per enrollee again, I don't have this off the top of my head. I'd always heard that Medicare Advantage is really popular because it offers better benefits, but it costs in general the government more because it has that. Is that true?
Yeah, MedPAC estimates this year it's about 106% of what traditional Medicare will spend on similar beneficiaries. It's about $27 billion in 1 year.
Okay. I would have thought maybe it's higher than 6%, but okay.
And, you know, to be fair, enrollees get something for that. They get lower cost sharing, they get extra benefits, but plans also benefit from that. And a key question is how much of the savings they generate should they get to keep? Should enrollees benefit? And should the government get back? And right now the government gets none of it.
So again, what you say, Ms. Graber, is rather than try and pinch pennies and result in the kind of abuses that Ms. Bent had to put up with, you'd rather focus on traditional Medicare and try and bring some kind of consumerism, some kind of cost-saving measures there. Again, you don't want to imply the same thing. You want to figure out a better way of controlling costs. Ms. Huberty, what do you say?
Well, I think we've touched a lot on the differences between what fee-for-service or original Medicare is paying versus Advantage plans. The biggest issue that we're seeing, and that Ms. Bent highlighted too, is that the standards are being applied so drastically differently. If you have an original Medicare plan and you had the situation that she had or a supplement, her husband would not have gone through that. And so there has to be some sort of, oversight or, some sort of, we have to be able to know why they're applying these standards differently and why someone with original Medicare is getting a better benefit than Advantage plan with this particular service.
Again, what standards? Because there is no pre-authorization with fee-for-service. There are standards with the, or is this just simply whether Medicare is going to reimburse regardless whether it's pre-approved? I mean, this is just whether you get reimbursed as a provider. Is that what you're talking about in terms of the standards?
You might be able to speak better to the provider reimbursement, but in terms of standards for a skilled nursing facility stay, it's very basic, where if a person needs 5 days a week of physical therapy or any types of therapy, then they get coverage under original Medicare. If they have an Advantage plan, they might get a denial, and no one's even looking at the records. No one is even counting the days.
So different question is, as a consumer, when you get to be an old guy like me, what are you going to choose?
Well, every
Right
choice.
now, I mean, if it was the same plan today, would you take traditional Medicare or would you take Medicare Advantage?
Choosing a health insurance plan is a highly individualized process, and I don't know enough about your medical history.
That's a dodge.
However, what I will say, though, is and this would be to anyone with an Advantage plan, I would say they can be very great and they're important and they do offer those supplemental benefits at times. But if you ever need skilled rehab, the way that Ms. Bent's husband did, to expect this to happen, to absolutely expect it.
Is that the main problem in rehab? Is that really in terms of the definition of our problem here today, is that the main problem?
I am here today to speak on that because our agency has become overwhelmed with these cases to the point that we've started turning them away. And so for me here personally, yes, this is a huge problem for beneficiaries.
We're seeing the baby boom generation.
Right.
New CMS rules. I've looked at those rules. I have a hard time making sense of them. Ms. Huberty, could you give me your assessment of whether these rules are going to clarify and solve all these problems?
I don't know enough about the proposed rules or the enacted rules to speak on that, but I don't know that it needs to clarify because it's already a rule that Medicare Advantage plans must cover the same must provide at least the same benefits as original Medicare.
That is exactly my point, that it's not a problem with rules, it's a problem with compliance and enforcement. In other words, the Medicare Advantage plans basically have been flouting their obligations under existing law without a new rule, correct?
Absolutely correct, yes.
And a new rule is only as good as their being willing to change their real-world practices and CMS enforce those obligations, which it has been failing to do, correct?
Correct, yes.
Ms. Grayburg, Senator Johnson asked you a question about, let me hold up the profits poster. He asked you, in effect, whether Medicare Advantage might be taking some of their additional revenue and putting it into dental and vision and other services that come with Medicare Advantage, but not with Medicare. Correct? You remember your testimony? And you said that was true. But the additional profits from going to Medicare Advantage are after those expenses, are they not?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so they've already made the investment, and they are, in fact, let me just put it in layman's terms, they're making a ton more money than those other categories of insurance, even after the benefits that they provide.
I guess I would need clarification on your response, because I don't really understand the methodology. I don't know what the actuarial value is for dental, vision, and hearing. So I don't know that those things could have been taken into consideration and removed from those numbers.
Well, if I tell you that the profits, and I think this point is largely uncontradicted, that profits for Medicare Advantage exceed those in other types of plans, despite having invested in those additional services, it leaves me to conclude that they could maybe reduce some of their profits and provide some additional services, for example, to Ms. Ben's husband, and still make pretty good profit, but just not as large as they would otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly, and I think there are a number of different policies that Congress can take on. So, for example, the quality bonus payments that are made to Medicare Advantage plans that were instituted in the Affordable Care Act really lead to a lot of those numbers. And so Congress could address some of those policies to reduce some of those profit margins if they so choose to.
So we could reduce the profits for Medicare Advantage. Would you recommend that?
I think there's a lot of people that would encourage Congress to specifically look at those quality bonus payments that were included in the Affordable Care Act, yes.
But as an alternative, maybe Medicare Advantage plans could include care for Ms. Ben's husband, which is what they promised to do. Correct?
Certainly.
Okay.
So in original Medicare, providers are paid based on the specific services they provide. However, in Medicare Advantage plans are paid a capitated rate, so a single amount per member per month to provide services regardless of the cost or the number of the services. And as a result, unlike in original Medicare, plans make more money by providing fewer services.
The insurers make more than double for each Medicare Advantage enrollee than for other insured individuals, like people in employer-sponsored plans. So all of these so-called competitors know they can make more money with Medicare Advantage plans. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so if their goal is to make money, they're all going to, in effect, benefit from the products while their beneficiaries are put at a disadvantage by the prior authorization.
I'll also add that they compete for their enrollees by offering these extra benefits. And so in the way they are able to offer the extra benefits is by lowering the bid for Medicare covered services. So to the extent they can use prior authorization or networks, referrals, other types of utilization and cost management tools, they will be able to get a larger rebate from CMS and be able to offer more extra benefits.
It's a kind of bait and switch plan. They bait people to come in with the promise of providing more, but in fact, many of the beneficiaries receive less, correct?
Well, I certainly wouldn't put it that way.
Well, I'm going to put it in the way that I think one of your clients, Ms. Huberty, put it, which is after the denial, I read in one of the articles about the work that you do that I think it was one of your clients, said it works until you need the big stuff. Maybe you can explain what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. To the point of the supplemental benefits, enticing people into taking them, that's the short term. And we all have, short-term goals. It's easy to save money at the beginning and to say, I'm going to get these extra things that original Medicare doesn't cover. That's really, enticing for me to take this plan. There might be a low premium as well. But most of us don't think about the larger problems when they're actually going to need help. And like in Ms. Bent's case, they looked and they saw 100 days of coverage. That's what they expected to need when the time came. And absolutely, I would say it's a bait and switch because you get to that point when you do actually need those bigger things and you're denied.
So it looks like a good plan as long as all you need is like dental or vision. Everybody needs dental or vision. Nobody plans on melanoma, correct?
Correct, yes.
Or on other kinds of acute rehabilitative or long-term rehabilitative care.
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Bent, when you signed up for Medicare Advantage, obviously you had no idea that this tragedy was going to befall your family.
Actually, Gary was a retired state employee, and his benefits are determined by the Office of the State Comptroller. And looking at the website for state retirees, it appears to me that if you are of an age that makes you eligible for Medicare, you're on a managed Medicare plan.
So that was almost automatically as a result of your being on the state.
Correct. Someone else made the decision for us that we would be on a Medicare Advantage plan. And periodically, someone else makes the decision for us that that plan will be administered by a different company.
And your husband taught physics at the University of Connecticut when he retired.
Yes, he was at the University of Connecticut for 23 years.
Okay. By the way, I'm a retiree from the University of Connecticut as well.
Yes, so you have some of the same issues.
I want to go back to the appeal questions, Ms. Huberty, because I think we began talking about them, and I'm not sure that you had the opportunity to explain what the barriers and the hurdles are to overcoming a denial. Maybe explain a little bit why only 11% of people actually appeal when the results are seemingly so positive.
Well, in the cases of skilled nursing facility denials, you're getting the appeals, you're getting the denials and the appeal instructions in real time. So in Ms. Bent's case, they're getting them as they're trying to recover from the illness. It's not like you get an x-ray and then 3 months later you get the bill and then you try to deny it at that time or try to appeal that denial at that time. So you have people who are very vulnerable, who are very sick, very ill, trying to recover, trying to get back home, getting thrown appeals at them, not knowing usually what they're signing or what's being asked of them. They'll do whatever is thrown at them. Usually it's appealing by phone. And once you get to those first two levels of phone appeals, generally, because those are handled immediately, the next step is requesting a federal administrative law judge hearing. And I would say most people assume that they need an attorney to do that, or if they don't realize that, they just think that process sounds far too daunting to continue. Again, they're trying to recover, they're trying to get better. Ms. Bent and I were speaking before the hearing, and it sounded like my experience is exactly what she experienced too. So even if you are successful in an appeal while you're still in the facility, you can expect another denial in a matter of days, and that review will continue about every 3 days.
So even if you're successful in appealing on a first round, you can be stuck on later rounds with the same algorithm-driven denial.
Generally, the algorithm is first applied when the person is first admitted in the skilled nursing facility. I haven't seen it come up since then, but what happens is it's almost once you've been flagged as someone who might need to leave now or doesn't meet these care coverage criteria anymore, you're kind of in the system for those denials, and they're having these reviews. I believe it's between 𝗣𝗵𝘆 and the provider as well, are going through reviews every 3 days.
And so far as the potential for competition is concerned, my understanding is that there are a small number of companies that dominate this market. Is that correct?
In terms of the third-party contractors?
Exactly.
Yes, I know of 2. Yes.
We're going to have to leave it now, but you've given us a lot of really good information. This investigation will continue. There's a lot here that needs to be known, and we're going to investigate with a goal of not only making Congress know it, but also the public and people like Ms. Bent and everyday Americans that have a real stake, real world stake, what the outcomes are. We've been talking a lot here at a 30,000-foot level, but many of you, Ms. Huberty, Ms. Bent, have seen it up close and how it impoverishes and deeply impacts people, impoverishes them financially, but also spiritually, when they have to be on the battlefield, when at the same time their loved ones are fighting for their lives. And the battlefield simply shouldn't be there. They shouldn't have to fight and ensure at the same time as their loved one is fighting for his life. So we want to know how these algorithms work, how these profits are so high, why people are potentially deceived into thinking that Medicare Advantage will be there for them, because the fact of the matter is it works until you need it. It works fine so long as you don't need it for the big stuff, like melanoma, like long-term care, like certain kinds of injections and other kinds of needs that everyday Americans have. So we're going to adjourn now this hearing. The record will...
Chris and the team believe it is their obligation to educate those making Medicare decisions to include the option of original Medicare and the freedom it brings versus Medicare Advantage private replacement plans that give free gifts, like some dental coverage, but routinely and undeniably cut off care when it is needed most. At the end of the day, lying in a hospital bed, just having been told by a doctor that you need surgery and then follow-up care, which plan would you rather be on? At that point, will you be happy you replaced comprehensive, unrestricted, original Medicare with a plan that gave you a free dental exam but now will stand in your way of treatment and the follow-up care you will need? As the senator said, it's great for the small stuff until you need it for the big stuff. Bait and switch. The information contained in this video and all of Chris's videos could literally mean the difference between life and death for someone. Would you please do us a favor and like this video and then share it with someone? Just as a reminder, since most all insurance agents you meet with locally will not tell you this, you have the option of being on original Medicare with a supplement to pay its costs, or give up original Medicare for a yearly contract on a Medicare Advantage plan. And if you don't believe us on this, find it on page 11 of the 2024 Medicare and You Guidebook. Original Medicare and a Medigap plan mean that you can travel the country without regard to doctor or hospital networks. You can find the best surgeons, the best cancer treatment, the best knee specialists, etc. in the entire country if you wanted to. No one will stand in your way. You will not need prior authorization for treatments, nor will you need a primary care doctor to agree and give you a referral. You just go. If you choose Medicare Advantage, Understand that you will need to consider their network restrictions. You may have an out-of-network option at a much, much higher cost. Also consider that they require prior authorization for nearly every expense that will cost them money. These delays in care are routine, not rare, and we hear of them every day. Benjamin Franklin once said, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest when you use it to improve yourself." Experience matters. Put our experience to use in recommending the right Medicare insurance program for you. We have no agenda. We will seek first to understand your situation before making any sort of recommendation. Tim Sanders said, "Education without application is just entertainment. Let us help." Thank you for watching with us today. Please share this valuable information with someone considering their Medicare options, and together we can push back against the Fortune 100 companies that exist only to take as much money from the taxpayers with as little care as possible from the seniors. God bless you.